With that down, let's get on to main topic number one. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by The Legend, who writes, "Well, John, I thought I would never hear this, but analysts are saying with Disney losing listen to this number, guys, Disney losing $85 billion in the last 3 weeks, that Apple has a chance to put up a bid on buying Disney. This would, in return, help solve Apple's content problems and slow start to their streaming service. Do you think this could actually happen? If so, how could this change Disney and all the other properties Disney has?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And this was one of those stories that came out that I literally had to do a little bit of a double take when I read it, because I'm like, wait a minute, that can't actually be right, is it? Like that's not right. But this is actually coming from the Hollywood Reporter. And a lot of things that some of us are forgetting about, that with the closure, we've talked a lot about Disney closing down the theme parks, which is massive. I mean, that's a massively huge thing. We cannot overstate how that is. Apple is while a lot of people think Disney is a very rich company, and they are, Apple dwarfs them. Apple is, I believe, a $1.3 trillion company. So Apple actually dwarfs them. So anyway, what got everybody going was this story in the Hollywood Reporter. They put out and they wrote this. "We believe," this is coming from Hollywood financial analysts, "we believe those with long-time horizons, like mega cap companies with large cash balances and whose equity outperformed Disney over the last 3 weeks, like Apple, could take advantage of the volatility," he wrote, noting that Disney's market capitalization was approximately $165 billion. That is down significantly. While Apple has about $107 billion in cash and securities alone. The upside from acquiring Disney would be securing their content streaming strategy and potential synergies from adding the emerging Disney ecosystem to the iOS platform. Apple did not respond to a request for comment. This, of course, comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter. This is kind of surprising, staggering, and all that kind of stuff. Now, let me tell you, first of all, why I don't think this will happen, okay? Let me tell you, first of all, about why I don't think this will happen. And then we'll talk for a minute about why it's actually feasible that it may. But let me start off with the reasons why I don't think it will happen. One of the things that these reports are not taking into consideration is the fact that Disney is not just a movie studio. One could make an argument that the movie side of Disney isn't even their most important branch. So yes, everything that was said in that Hollywood Reporter article is true. Apple acquiring something like Disney, if Apple, like Disney, believes that the future is streaming entertainment and all that kind of stuff, then a purchase of Disney would seem to make sense, absolutely. But Disney is so much more than that, because I don't know that Apple has any desire, Rob. I don't think Apple has any desire at this point to step in and get into the theme park business. And all the debts and all the expenditures that would entail, not to mention every other aspect of the Disney business. The other thing is this, whereas a lot of people, when Disney bought Fox for, what was it, $78 billion? Was that the final number? Something along those lines, $78 billion? Like, a lot of people are like, hey, this is going to make Disney stretch. $78 billion in cash and stock is nothing to sneeze at, even for a company like Disney. Well, the estimations that I'm getting, Rob, on what it would cost for Apple to purchase Disney isn't $78 billion. It isn't $1 billion. It isn't $1.5 billion. It isn't $100 billion. It isn't $150 billion. It isn't $200 billion. The estimates I'm reading here, Rob, are $400 billion is what it would take. Now, Apple doesn't have $400 billion in cash, but neither did Disney. Disney had to do their purchase of Fox in a combination of cash and stock. So that's what Apple would have to do. They would have to purchase it in cash and stock. Now, some people will say, oh, but Bob Iger doesn't want to sell. It's not. This is a publicly traded company. All that means is you just have to buy enough of the shares that you have a controlling interest.
Right. They could do it. They could take a hostile takeover.
That is the definition of a hostile takeover. They don't need to have even Disney's board get on board with it. Now, that is an unlikely scenario. I'm just saying you got to keep that in mind. But understanding that in these times, while Apple is doing very, very well, I can't see Apple wanting to suddenly part with $400 billion in stock and cash for a business that they don't even want to be in more than half of what Disney's business is.
Right.
I mean, so there's that. Why this looks like there could be a lot of validity to it is, of course, it does make sense. Apple would benefit greatly from having Disney's entertainment division, sure, but Disney's not looking to sell off their entertainment division. So there's that, but that does make sense. And believe it, there are a lot of people saying, no way, Disney's too valuable. Believe it, Apple can afford to buy Disney. If Apple wanted to, they could afford to buy Disney. So I thought the report was fascinating, and it is something we should keep our eyes on because, listen, losing 30% of your value in 3 weeks, when you lose $85 billion, like when I go through my wallet and I'm one $20 bill short, I freak out. It's like when you look in your pockets and you're missing $85 billion, that's significant. And it does put you in a position, it puts you in a vulnerable position. But I just, again, at the end of the day, the issue for me isn't can Apple take over Disney? Because they can. It's would Apple want to take over Disney? And I just see the negatives outweighing the positives here. So I'm going to guess that this is probably something that won't happen, but it's certainly something we need to keep our eyes on. Rob, you see this situation. What are the first thoughts that come to your mind?
Well, I mean, logistically, I can't even imagine what it would be like for Apple, which is a technology company, to take over. Like you said, they have cruise ships. They have theme parks. I mean, it's so far away from what Apple did. And here's the thing. Apple pioneered streaming with music. And they know that it's a slow build. This streaming war is, everyone's thinking about what's going to happen with the next fiscal quarter. This is a long-term strategy. And as Apple makes more and more shows, I mean, they don't have a lot of shows, but whether it's For All Mankind, whether it's the morning show, the movies they've been acquiring, their content has been pretty top drawer. So I think what's going to end up happening with them is eventually, look, you got to start somewhere. And that's what they're doing. And they're going to create their own material that they own outright from the get-go. They own all the merchandising rights. I mean, it's acquiring Disney. I can't even imagine how long a sale like that would. I mean, yeah, you want to acquire their stock. Go right ahead. And as we all know, these precipitous drops are temporary. I mean, this is literally due to earnings today. A year from now, assuming that this coronavirus it goes away, I mean, people talk about stock prices being inflated. I think these stock prices are being deflated. Yes, it is a global pandemic that we're dealing with, and that's what's causing all this. But it's certainly, the companies are certainly not being devalued just because their parks are shuttered for health reasons. It's not like they've fallen into disrepair and nobody's going to Disneyland anymore. No one's going to Disneyland right now. But if they can weather this storm, and a lot of people won't, Hollywood is going to be changed forever because of this. But if they can weather this storm, as soon as the parks open again, their stock is going to go right back up. I wish I had lots of money, because I would jump right in and buy as much stuff as I can with our depressed markets, because it's a pretty good bet people are going to make some decent money.
Yeah, that's a great point as well, because if you're a shareholder right now, you got to ask yourself, yeah, well, here's the risk. Here's the risk, right? If you're a Disney shareholder right now, you've got your stock and this is at a certain value that's much less than it was yesterday. They're asking themselves, is my stock tomorrow going to be even less, or should I jump ship on this stock now? I think the wise thing is exactly what you're saying. If I'm a Disney shareholder, which I am not, but if I was a Disney shareholder, my thinking is I can't afford to part with this stock because the value it's at right now, it's just going to go up later. I mean, maybe I sell it and then buy it back 5 minutes later. I mean, I don't know, but that seems like an odd thing. But there is another interesting angle to this, Rob, and that is that there has always been a very interesting close tie between Disney and Apple. Steve Jobs was, for a period of time, the single largest shareholder of Disney stock in the world. There was no individual for a period of time. There was no individual for a period of time that had more ownership of Disney than Steve Jobs did. Now, it was still very, very tiny percent, but nobody had more than he did for a period of time. And so there's always been an interesting relationship between the two companies. And if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong about this, but I believe Jobs actually sat on the board of Disney for a while. If I'm not mistaken, I think he did. I could be wrong about that. But,
dude, I mean, what if Bob Iger suddenly was hired by Apple?
Oh, jeez.
I mean, that's what I was thinking when this topic came up. I'm like, huh. People are still very puzzled over his abrupt exit from Disney.
But was it that abrupt? We knew he had announced years ago that he was going to leave at the end of his term, so it wasn't that abrupt.
I just think it'd be what a baller move it would be if Bob
Iger
all
of a sudden he took over. Oh my gosh. Anyway, guys, question here is, what do you think about all this? Do you think that, hey, this is probably much ado about nothing. It's interesting, but it's not about the could have, it's about the should have. Do you think like I do that this probably will not come to pass? Or do you think like some other people are thinking like, hey, in today's economic realities, maybe it could? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right.